Hello and welcome to Marine Conservation Wednesdays. Today we're here with Emily, who is a marine and coastal specialist. So, Emily, could you tell us what you're doing at the moment?
Sure. So I currently lead the Local Government Association Coastal Special Interest Group, which is quite a mouthful, so we sometimes call ourselves LGA Coastal SIG for short. We're a membership group of 57 councils from all around England's coast, and together we serve 16 million people. We work on lots of coastal issues, not just environmental ones. These include climate resilience, sustainable coastal economies, coastal pollution. Kind of in a nutshell, we're working to strengthen national and local policy. So my main activity is advocacy. So that means lots of meetings with MPs, ministers, civil servants, councillors, council officers, and others who are working on coastal issues. And I manage a small team that supports the group of 57 councils. I do lots of media interviews, panel appearances, and write lots of briefings for policymakers. And as well as my day job, I'm also a trustee of the Marine Conservation Society, which is a UK marine conservation charity. And we're working towards a better protected, cleaner and healthier ocean, and one that we can all enjoy.
Wow, that all sounds so cool. You've obviously got loads of different roles that all sound very important. So how do you hope that your work will benefit the conservation sector?
Sure. So in my day job as the lead officer of the LGA Coastal SIG, we're tackling lots of issues that affect England's coast. But one of the things I'm most proud of is the motion for the ocean. So this is enabling councils to become actors in marine conservation. So to step up and play their part in recovering the health of our ocean. This was originally the brainchild of a really brilliant councillor at Plymouth City Council called Councillor Dr. Pamela Buchan. She came up with the idea of a model motion during her PhD research in marine social science at the University of Exeter. And Pam had approached me and a lady called Nicola Bridge, who's at the Ocean Conservation Trust. And together we developed this model motion. And to explain, a motion is a proposal that's put forward at a council meeting. And a model motion is a template motion that a council can adapt to their local circumstances. But essentially, we've developed a model motion for the ocean that puts forward 8 evidence-based pledges that, if they were delivered, would contribute to ocean recovery. So these include things like embedding ocean recovery at the highest levels of decision-making in a council. So it's not just the responsibility of one team in the council, it's the collective responsibility of everybody who works for that council. It might be committing to ensuring the growth of that any growth of the blue economy locally is sustainable, and ensuring that one of the pledges is ensuring that all school children have the opportunity to experience the ocean firsthand before they leave primary school. So I'm super excited about that one. We've had 6 councils so far that have made an ocean recovery declaration using our motion for the ocean, 5 in England and 1 in Wales. Lots more interested, and we're looking forward to seeing which council will be next. And in the southwest, both Plymouth City Council and Falmouth Town Council have made this declaration, which is super exciting, and we're hoping others in the southwest will follow their lead. Any listeners to this podcast can certainly help us. So you can write to your local councillor and ask them to table a motion for the ocean at the next council meeting. You can find everything if you just Google motion for the ocean. It's on the Ocean Conservation Trust website, and you can find out who your local councillor is at writetothem.com. And I guess thinking about how that will benefit the conservation sector. I mean, local authorities can't solve the ocean crisis alone, but they should be playing their part. And prior to my current role, I had always worked in NGOs, mainly in policy and advocacy, which was a lot of badgering central government to do better. But I'd never really thought of local government as actors in ocean recovery. But councils have a lot of powers and responsibilities which can make a real difference locally for our ocean. So that if a council was to make an ocean recovery declaration step up to play its part for ocean recovery, it would mean that it's not just NGOs or coastal residents who are taking action locally, but councils too. And that's great news for ocean conservation.
Wow, it sounds like your work will have such positive consequences for the ocean and the conservation of the ocean as well. And as you said, everyone has a role to play, especially local councils. You've obviously had a lot of experience in the conservation sector. So how did you get into working in the conservation sector?
Yeah, so I fell in love with the ocean on childhood holidays to the seaside, which I sort of realised now how lucky I was to have them. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, but we used to go and stay with my auntie and uncle in North Wales, and those sort of magical childhood experiences were so instrumental in me falling in love with the sea. And from there, my fascination grew, and I knew I wanted to go to university to study marine biology, which I did. I went to Bangor University and had an amazing time. When I was at school, my well-intentioned teachers and parents really tried to discourage me from pursuing marine biology, just because they didn't think it was a real job. They had my best interest at heart, but I'm really, really glad I didn't listen to them. I went to do a 4-year MSci course at Bangor, and I had thought that I would go into research. And then it was during my master's year, which was a sort of 12-month independent research project, that I realised very strongly that research wasn't for me. And I had been volunteering for North Wales Wildlife Trust at the time, helping out in the office and supporting them on surveys. And it was like a light bulb switched on. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to work in marine conservation. I hadn't realised how much threat our seas were under, how much we stood to lose, so how amazing our seas are. And I knew I wanted to play my part in their protection. So when I graduated, I'm a first generation graduate, didn't really have a clue how to make a career in conservation. So I left, I got a job at the Environment Agency. I then ended up going to Sri Lanka to work on sea turtle conservation project. Then went to Ascension Island, where I was a marine programme coordinator, doing sea turtle monitoring and working on marine policy. That's how I kind of got interested in conservation policy, so how we can use that as a tool for good for the ocean. And when I came back to the UK, I went to work for the Wildlife Trusts, where I held quite a few different marine conservation roles, both for local wildlife trusts and nationally. So I was their National Marine Policy Officer for a little while, where I managed sort of a big national dive survey programme and some other things. And I think it was during that time that I realised the importance of local action as well as national policy. So I then went to work to develop projects that enable people from all different backgrounds and circumstances to get to enjoy the ocean, because there are so many people that don't get to have those incredible experiences of the ocean, even if they live very, very near to the coast. So I developed a couple of projects. So one of them's a multi-million-pound project in the Northeast called Seascapes, which is the first project of its kind in the UK, and one in the Northwest, which is called Our Deep Estuary, and it's a cross-border project between England and Wales. And for this book, I was recognised as a 30 under 30 for environmental education, which was I was super chuffed. I wasn't expecting that at all, but you know, it's nice to be recognised when you pour your heart and soul into your work. But yeah, I think I really see the value of that local action and the national policy. We need both to sort of make a difference for the sea. And then in my later 20s, I applied to join the board of the Marine Conservation Society and was really proud to be appointed as a trustee for my expertise in marine conservation policy and practice. And I'm now really proud to be the board's equity, diversity and inclusion champion. So that's working towards what we call One Ocean for Everyone. So changing our culture of the organisation to collective responsibility for equity, diversity, inclusion, and making our place and our place of work and the work that we do much more inclusive. Hard work, but absolutely needed.
You definitely have such an established career in the conservation sector. You've said that you've had a lot of involvement in trying to make the conservation sector more diverse and inclusive for different people. How have you found your experience as a woman has affected your career?
Honestly, it's mostly been positive. Working in marine conservation, I am surrounded by women, both at my level and in senior leadership roles. So most of my managers have been women, most of the directors and CEOs even have been women in places I've worked. I'm often in the majority in working in a marine conservation organisation, but I do really recognise my privilege as a white cisgender woman in that I at least visually fit into most of those workplaces. I look like most of the people in the organisation. But when I was appointed to the board at MCS, I was 28 and I certainly carried a lot of imposter syndrome. Some of that was me and some of that was a product of the reactions of a few men who had sort of reacted in a certain way to my appointment. And I certainly felt I had to prove myself, and I wasted a lot of energy, a lot of anxiety in trying to prove that I was worth my seat at the table. And around the same time, I started my current job leading the Coastal Special Interest Group. And in that setting, in that sort of local government setting, I've certainly faced a lot more sexism, a lot more ageism. I look younger than I am, which sometimes a gift, often a curse. And in my first meeting in London, so I'd spoken to everybody extensively on email, but nobody had met me face to face. This meeting I was chairing, the first thing someone said to me was, "Are you here to take the minutes?" And somebody else at the end of the meeting came up to ask me if I knew my boss beforehand, and that was how I got the job. I didn't. That wasn't the case at all. And in this role, I'm quite often the only woman in the room, very often the youngest woman in the room. And in the beginning, it was just awful. I'd been mansplained to regularly. I thought I had to prove myself in every single meeting that I went to. And, quite often just being tears. I'd go home and be like, what am I doing? This is such a difficult battle that, an unnecessary layer to what is already a challenging job. But I'm really glad I pushed through. So from those challenging beginnings, shall we say, has grown great success. And those same doubters now tell me that the group's the strongest it's ever been, and even won a national award last year for my work. But I was thinking back, and not that long ago, a couple of months ago, one of those male colleagues said something like, I didn't rate you at the beginning, but I am impressed by you now. And it's really stuck in my mind because there's an assumption that I was useless. They'd taken me at first glance that I was useless. Was that because of my age, my gender? I had a really established track record, and I didn't come in with anything to prove. I shouldn't have had to prove it. Why did it have to be that way, I guess? And would they form those first superficial opinions of an older male colleague in that same way? I doubt it. Would he have had to prove himself to the same extent to gain their respect? I doubt it. I mean, the authority gap, it's real, and it's absolutely tiring. We've got a long way to go, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of women will be able to relate to your experiences, but it sounds like your perseverance really paid off, and that you've definitely proved them wrong through all your successes. So could you tell me what some of your favourite memories are from your time working conservation?
Yeah, so I've had some really incredible wildlife experiences during my time working in conservation. So, the never gets old watching a sea turtle lay their eggs, or getting to show people. I absolutely love sort of taking people to view that in a responsible way, and I really enjoyed that as part of past jobs I've done. I think back to I really enjoy doing sort of media interviews, because you get this opportunity to reach a huge audience of people. So I've been on sort of national TV and radio, and you think afterwards, I've spoken to millions of people about the sea, and that's, hopefully some of it's sunk in and they've realised what we've got on our doorstep in the UK. And I can't, it just doesn't beat that privilege, I think, of taking people to see wildlife. So particularly when a few times I've taken children to rock pool, to go rock pooling even for the first time, and that's just seeing the light switch on behind their eyes is the most incredible feeling. I love getting to do that. But I think my absolute favourite memories are when I know that something I've done has had an impact for the ocean. So I think when we got the call from the National Lottery Heritage Fund to say we'd got the money for one of those big projects I'd spent lots of years developing, lots of blood, sweat, coffee, tears had gone into that bid, and that call to say we'd got nearly £3 million to deliver this project, that was, sort of high as a kite feeling. And then really recently, when one of the councils in the northeast, it was the first council in the north to declare the urgent need for ocean recovery. I think just the pride at being instrumental in making that happen, that was really, really, huge, because the reality of making that happen is a lot of hard work, a lot of time at your desk, a lot of meetings, a lot of writing, a lot of late nights. But actually, when it's come good and it's going to deliver for the ocean, that I think is really, really exciting.
You've definitely done so much important work and been so successful in your career as a woman, and you're very inspirational. Could you give our listeners some tips of how to get into conservation?
Sure. There isn't one set path, and I would say to people, don't try and follow someone else's path. You, listener, are in a unique combination of experiences, skills, and ideas. Don't become what you think you should be. Try and bring your brilliant, shiny self, and try and find your niche in what is a very competitive market. It's important to make yourself stand out, but for the right reasons. And some ways that you can do that are volunteering. I know you hear that a lot, but it's so important, not just because of helping you get some experience for your CV, but it helps you understand what excites you and where you thrive, as well as building your contacts in this sector. Another one is to use social media well. So get yourself on LinkedIn and make sure that your personal Instagram and Facebook account are private. Get yourself a mentor. I didn't really realize the value of this until I got one. So you can check out A Focus on Nature. They have a really brilliant mentoring program, and I'm a mentor for them as well. Or you can approach someone whose work you respect and ask if they have capacity to mentor you. Another one is, if you see an issue affecting our planet, tackle it. You don't have to wait. You can tackle it right now, whether that's on the ground, joining a campaign, starting a campaign, even just writing to your MP, to your councillor. Don't assume that somebody else is going to tackle it. And that's a great way to show that you walk the talk. And then the last one, I think, is to use your voice. So I made the mistake of thinking that my voice didn't carry any weight until I had a degree, a master's, some experience, but I was wrong. Your voice matters right now, and we need voices from all parts of society speaking up for the planet. And I think sort of linked to all of that is this: I know you worked really hard for your degree, I certainly did, but having a degree alone won't be enough to get a job in this field, and sort of that setting yourself apart is really, really important. And for me, as well as the volunteering I did during my degree, the work experience that I got from the part-time jobs I had to do, and I mean, they weren't glamorous, they were washing pots in restaurants, and I worked as a student support worker, and they were absolutely integral for me to get my first job after university. And I also encourage people to learn to drive if they're able, because this is often essential for fieldwork jobs. And if you wanted to work in marine related work, it could also be worth getting your powerboat qualifications and some relevant boat experience before you sort of step out into the world of work.
Thank you so much for sharing that advice, and thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today. You've been amazing, and it's been fantastic hearing about all of your experiences and your successes in the conservation sector.
Oh, thank you, Millie. Thank you for having me.